Everyone has a story to tell. Welcome to DingoTalk, where we explore the experiences that make us who we are. Here's your host, Carlo Guadagnino.
Hi, I'm Ed Diorio.
Hi, this is Jack Hillgroves.
Hi, this is Kyle Dawson.
Hi, I'm David Tasca.
Hi, I'm Brian Fenley.
Hi, I'm Fred Ryan.
Hi, I'm Matt Neverett.
Hey, I'm Dave Sims.
And then being the MC, because that is what you MC, kind of the in between the innings, get everybody back into, or keep everybody kind of involved and engaged.
Yeah.
Does that come easier to you as well with the theatrical background, and kind of how did that come about?
For sure. It was my first ever internship out of college. I was the MC for the team in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And, I loved it then. I had so much fun with it. Your job is to have fun, because if you're not, the kids and the families that come won't either. So my job was to have fun, make sure everything was in line, and don't mess up on the mic and you'll be good. And, I mess up on the mics to this day, and I've been with the team for 3 seasons now. But if you do it with energy, you do it with fun, nobody notices and nobody cares, because, I get, for as many times as, at least in my viewing area, I get recognized for being on their television screens as a reporter and an anchor. I get recognized out in the Pittsburgh area and here in my coverage area for being the MC. And it's fun because, it's nice to know that that you are leaving a staple on those people. Cause I mean, I can tell you it's not a Pirates game. It's not a familiar setting for like professional sports fans, especially in the Pittsburgh area.
Mm-hmm.
So every time we get audiences, I have to take the mindset of, what can I do to stay in their minds? Mm-hmm. And what can I do to make them say, you know what, I'd go back there. I'd go back. That was a really fun night. I'd go back there.
What is your day-to-day like with Channel 9?
It's crazy. But it's a good kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's the kind of crazy that I was meant for, I like to think. It can go from, all right, we have this press conference at 10, this fundraiser at 1, and this at 2, and you work a 9:45 to 6:15 shift. You got all your ducks in a row. You do them, you report them, you write them. Your stories get run on the night shows, and you're done. And that's just a very easy day. Then you have your days where you go in and on a random Tuesday in December or like February when nothing's going on and it's cold out and nobody's doing anything, where you have to use your contacts and your people in the areas that you work in to say, okay, what stories can I make? What do people care about, and start and make from scratch? It presents new challenges every day, whether it's how am I going to tell the story I'm going to tell today, to what story am I going to tell in the first place today, to how can I, keep the same personality and energy each day.
Started with the Wild Things. That was your first internship. How did you end up going to that?
The Wild Things in Waynesburg University have always had a great relationship. In part one, I was talking about our sports announcing camp. The culmination always of the sports announcing camp, because it runs Monday to Friday. They leave on Friday, but Thursday night, the campers, they take the Waynesburg truck up to the Wild Things ballpark, and they broadcast a couple of innings of a Wild Things game. And you kind of prepare all week for that. So the university and the organization have had a great relationship. My good friend I was talking about in part one, Kyle Dawson, their award-winning broadcaster, was the voice of their team in 2019, had been for a couple of years at that point, posted the internship. And, despite him being my friend, I still had to go through the process. I still had to, interview. I still had to submit my tape. Mm-hmm. And he told me after I got the job, after I was awarded the internship, because, obviously with my grandfather announcing football and basketball, my first passions are football and basketball. So I told him he's like, talk about your interest in announcing baseball. And I said, to be honest with you, baseball would probably be like the third most one I would want to do for a living. And then after I awarded the internship, Kyle told me, he's like, to be honest with you, when you said that, baseball wasn't like a huge interest in the way that you worded it, it was, kind of a turnoff. And I'm like, okay, constructive interview tips and things of that nature. It was really great.
So now you've graduated, you had the part-time job with the Fan, you as you're finishing that up and you make the move to Steubenville. Why the move to Steubenville? And then also congratulations, because I know roughly about a month ago, 2 months ago, you moved to full-time on the weekends, correct?
Yeah.
So congratulations on that.
Appreciate it. Yeah. So college, especially my spring semester, my senior year, because I was the executive producer of our sports network. And I was telling you before we started part 2 that my schedule was nuts. Like the PAC had moved all of its athletics into the spring of 2021. So we had 9 basketball broadcasts into 3 home football broadcasts. And I was just gassed. The pandemic took a lot out on me too. The lockdowns, virtual learning. I kind of told myself, and I was very comfortable at the Fan. I was getting the hours that I had liked. My parents weren't in any hurry to kick me out of the house anytime soon. So I knew that I could graduate from college, work my 3-4 days a week at the Fan, and kind of take a little bit of time to figure it out and go from there.
Mm-hmm.
My friend Dylan Cleland, who again works with us at WTOV9, graduated in December. He was, I forget his timetable, but ended up, long story short, accepting a job offer with WTOV as the weekend anchor I think around the beginning of June. And by this point, this is only a month after we had walked for graduation. So, I'm happy for Dylan, but I'm kind of still set on what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then from what I might have been able to understand during the hiring process, is that they might have had a hiring freeze get lifted. And our news director was reaching out and receiving applications for multimedia journalists, and has a great relationship with Lanny. At the start of, when I started at WTOV last July, we had 9 Waynesburg alums working at the station. 3 reporters, a couple of videographers, and a couple of directors and master control operators too. And a couple have since left for greener pastures, but we had just hired, one of them was an intern turned into a part-time MMJ, and one's now a director. So there's a great relationship there with Lanny and the comm department and our TV station, which is awesome. Our news director knew that, and I get a call. I'm sitting there one night at 9:00, I think, watching the Pirate game or playing video games or something. And Dylan had already been working there for a couple of weeks, and it's a 740 number.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, Steubenville. Okay. Well, Dylan works in Steubenville. Pick the phone up. I say, hello, this is Jack. It's my trademark thing when I answer the phone and I don't recognize the number. Hey, Jack, this is Don Sloan, news director with WTOV9, blah, blah, blah. And we start having this conversation, and it was a very relaxed conversation. Don's a great guy. I'm really fortunate to work for him, and Tim McCoy, our general manager. It's a great place to be right now for me. And I couldn't be happier with where I am. And then towards the end, he had talked to me about and kind of invited me to apply for one of the open MMJs. I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. Dylan works there. And then towards the end of the conversation, Don's like, yeah, it's a little late now, but I think I'm going to reach out to Ed DiOrio tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, okay. Ed DiOrio, Dylan Cleland, Jack Hillgrove, we were the 3 Stooges, the 3 Musketeers. If wherever one of us was, the other one or both of us, we were inseparable in college. Best for
team perspective, it's a lot. And there's a lot of game notes to be done. There's a lot of other work to be done that is outside of the broadcast. And not all of the broadcasters in the league are like that. Most of them just to go in, get their game notes done. And some of them don't even do game notes. They just prep for the game and do it. That's not what I'm able to do. I'm at the office at 9 a.m. doing the game notes, doing the stat packs for the managers and the coaches, having a hand in the in-game stuff that's going on, still having a hand in all the creative stuff that's going on from the video boards perspective, the music, the PA announcer, whatever. I've got all that responsibility. Oh, and then put on a headset at 6:45 and do the game. So I've been fortunate to have 3 or 4 really, really good broadcast interns that have been in the booth with me. So those guys help me when I'm at home. And I've always said I love the road way more than being at home, because it's a chance to just do the broadcasting stuff and the social and the media relations stuff.
This season specifically, there was a lot of excitement there in Washington County.
There was.
What was different about this team than teams in the past?
Well, I don't think this team was as good as the 2018 team, oddly enough. And I've said that to their faces. So if they listen to this and get upset with me, they already know that I've said it. I think there was something special about this team, though.
Mm-hmm.
They were from day one I think a lot closer than all of our other teams. And they went through a lot of roster moves and transactions throughout the first few weeks of the season. As we tried to blend right. I mean, we came close to trading an all-star outfielder at the deadline for another all-star outfielder. We ended up getting the all-star outfielder, Anthony Brocato from Florence, for a player to be named. So for a future, we also released an all-star catcher in the middle of the season. I mean, the guy was Alex Alvarez, was hitting like 200. So it wasn't like he was incredible, and the catching in the west side of the league wasn't great. So he was an all-star for that reason, but we released an all-star. And the team never really took it against themselves. They took it in stride and kept going.
It's funny you bring up the Bison. We had a previous guest that was also a Bison alumni. He was the announcer for a long time and then became now with the Pittsburgh Pirates for 28 years, Greg Brown. Any experiences with Greg?
Oh, absolutely. Love Greg. Yes, without a doubt. So we would do skipping ahead a little bit, and then we'll jump back. When I got my job at Empire Sports Network, they were doing Buffalo Bisons games. So I started off as the assistant producer for those Bisons games. And basically I would be in the booth working with the announcers, statistician, stage manager, and just kind of getting everything together for the broadcast. Eventually I moved from assistant producer to producer and director for the broadcast. But being in the booth for those 4 years, I got to work with the announcers exclusively. So Greg Brown and Pete Weber are very good friends of mine. They're awesome people. They're absolutely as wonderful as you think they are when you hear them on television. And I'm so glad that Greg's from Pittsburgh. So for him to go back to Pittsburgh was his dream job, and he got to do it. So yeah, Greg is wonderful. And I'm glad he had him on the show. He must have been fabulous to talk to.
Now that I know that you're an avid baseball fan, there was a pretty controversial thing came up here in the past week. Big Papi in, only guy in, Barry Bonds not in, Clemens not in, Schilling not in. Some of the other names that were on that list that I don't think have any association to the steroids, but not sure how they didn't get in. What is your take on that? Is Barry Bonds a Hall of Famer? I mean,
see, it's so tough because you can literally take the line that Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens were Hall of Famers before they ever started taking steroids. And they fall into a different category than Manny Ramirez and Alex Rodriguez in the fact that they really never had to take a steroids test. They just didn't. It wasn't something that Major League Baseball pursued. Okay, so now you're going after them saying that you did this and it changed everything. And Major League Baseball wasn't wrong in doing that. But the problem that I have in not letting them in is that they were Hall of Famers before this even happened, and they never broke any rules. They never broke any rules, okay? David Ortiz had a positive test, and MLB is going back and they're spinning it and they're saying, well, it wasn't steroids. Yes, it was. It was a steroids test that he tested positive for.
Why did you go with Fox 5 and then from Fox 5 to Fox 8?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, so when I grew up in San Diego and it was during the summer, during one of my college years, I'm like, how can I stay productive and do something that's worthwhile? And that's why, with Fox 5 being in San Diego. And so I started working for them on their news area. And then they brought me on to do some funny little skits with them on their morning show. Like, I thought I was just some intern. And then they started putting me on their morning show and doing like on-air segments. And so that was kind of fun. And then again, as you know, it's being in those environments that's everything. You can read a book, you can study all you want in a classroom about the business of sports and media and newsrooms, but until you're in there, until you understand what that's like and how it all goes down, that's the best education. So I thought to myself, not just do one internship, but do another one at Fox 8 in North Carolina, which was where my college was. And not only that, but it's the connections that you make, the people that you work with and get to see. It's priceless. It's invaluable.
Now, so while you're in your senior year now, do you do your internship in your senior year? Do you do it earlier? How did that fall?
Well, I almost didn't do my internship because I was I was ready to graduate. It was May of 2002 was when I was scheduled to graduate, and I was ready to be done, and I was preparing resume tapes and all those things to send out to smaller market TV stations all over the East Coast, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a sports anchor or a play-by-play guy. Like, that was my thing. And even though, like, and I'll backtrack a little bit, while I was in school, I was trying to do everything. I was literally I spent 2 summers a work study program at the TV station engineering.
Mhm.
I had a work study job as a master technical director. I had a work study job as the news photographer. We did a weekly news show. So I would go out and shoot all the stories for all of the news reporters and that kind of stuff. So I produced my own high school football show. I actually created and produced my own high school football show while I was there. So I had my hand in just about everything, but at the same time, that's what I wanted to do, and I was going to go forward with that. So I almost didn't do my internship because of that. And what happened was there was a friend by the name of Jeff Sandusky, and I were both sports anchors that year, and he actually got an internship at Fox Sports Pittsburgh. And he said, hey, really, you should really talk to this guy, and I think you should, come up and do it, and, so on and so forth. And I remember a conversation I had with my mom, and I guess, but I couldn't get the internship through the communications department because my grades weren't good enough.
Okay.
They had a minimum grade point average that you had to meet in order to be eligible for their internship program, and I didn't meet that.
Okay.
Because again, I wasn't a great student. I was good at doing, not necessarily sitting and listening and learning. But somebody told me a story about another student in a situation similar to mine, where he went to another department to get his internship. So I went to the sports management department, and I had Dr. Yarborough, I believe was his name. I had him for a class, and he said, yeah, sure, you can do the internship. But the internship program in our department is 12 credits. So not only did I have to do 12 credits worth of hours, but I had to pay for 12 credits.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to take my chances and do what I need to do. And I remember having a conversation with my mom and cleaning up the language. She said, no, you're doing it. She said, we'll take care of the money. We'll find a way, but there's no way you're not going to do an internship if you can get it. So I applied for it. I met a gentleman by the name of Craig McConnell, who ended up bringing me on for the internship for that summer, and it just kind of took off from there.
Well, let's talk about some of the broadcasts that you've been a part of, because Pirates-wise, there was a 3-year spurt there where it had to be really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Had to be really fun. Is there any games from that 3 years? Maybe in general, are there certain games that you remember, they stick out to you there, and what
Absolutely.
are they?
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about the Pirates, the clinching games of those, I'll never forget the night they clinched at Wrigley.
Mm-hmm.
I did not do the post-game show that night. I did the pregame show the next day. And I just remember how much, obviously that whole stretch was great. And, even when, the biggest thing for us is, it's not so much about the product. It's not always about the product on the field, even with, doesn't matter what team it is, you're always trying to, showcase the players and who they are. And, a lot of it is X's and O's and about, how, what goes on the field and on the ice. But so much of the fun things that I like to do tell stories about things that people don't know about. So like, I love those games. I remember I edited highlights for Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals in 2009. That Pirates game, I've obviously Sidney Crosby's return from the concussion in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
We just had Geno Malkin's 1,000th game.
But that's not normal in the industry, right? You don't normally just kind of get, make it happen.
Yeah, typically not. I mean, everything in minor league baseball is so individual, based on each city, each team. A lot of it is based on who owns the team, and that's something that not a lot of people know, is that a lot of these decisions are based on who owns the ball club. And it was the Pirates that owned and still own the Marauders. So, financially, I didn't apply or get anything crazy, but if you needed something, you needed a piece of gear that was you could reasonably accommodate, yeah, they would go ahead and do it. And I've seen some, like in Birmingham, we were owned by the group that owned Bassmasters and a couple other businesses, so it was kind of a private entity. And here in Las Vegas, we're owned by the Howard Hughes Corporation, which is like a multinational real estate conglomerate that's got unlimited pockets. So I've been in, 3 different places with 3 different setups as far as the ownership. That's one thing that not a lot of people know or take into consideration with these gigs is, where's the money coming from? Who are you getting it from? So it was different with the Pirates, and I had built up enough of a rapport with the ball club prior to me even getting there to where they knew that. At least I thought I knew what I was doing, and it definitely developed and got better over the 2 seasons that I was there.
What?
As far as not being afraid to rebound from that, you have to be able to apply to a bunch of different jobs. I would go to the baseball winter meetings every year for a 3-year stretch in a row and apply for probably 20 to 30 jobs a year, whether it be broadcasting or otherwise. And I got 0 job offers when it came down to the end of the day from those 3 years of going. So I got told no a bunch of times, and it was a humbling experience for sure, but it's one that I think I'm really glad that I learned early on is don't be afraid to hear no is what it comes down to, but don't be afraid to celebrate the yeses as well, because when these jobs are really hard to get, especially in baseball, they're few and far between. So you definitely have to consider yourself really fortunate if you are lucky enough to impress someone enough to get a job, whether it's baseball or otherwise. There are a million people who would cut off an arm to do what I do. And I'm fortunate, and I definitely don't take anything for granted. And that's, I would say the main thing is don't be afraid to hear no. Don't be afraid to celebrate the yeses either, though.
Well, back then in the ancient days, it's something called Action Line, and people would write in or call, I think mainly write in, but some would call. And I'll never forget this one. I was in New York City. I had these 2 sodas I'd never heard before. How can I get them in Philly? And I start calling these consumer places, and you write about it. And that's what I did for a month. And then in September 75, I was supposed to start as the Philadelphia Inquirer, sports columnist and beat writer. But prior to that, this is when diversity in newspapers was not real good. And the sports department was a freaking joke. It was like hardly anybody. It might have been 5 or 6 guys at Metropolitan Dailies. So a guy that had gone to school with at Bethany, his father was like an executive at the New York Daily News. He got and they didn't have any black guys that covered sports. They had very few black reporters. One thing led to another. I meet Dick Young, a legendary sports writer, in Philly at Joe Frazier's camp on Broad Street in Philly.
Okay.
And hit it off there, and I got an offer to work there, and then I got an offer from Chicago, and then the concrete offer came in from the Inquirer. So at one point in the middle of August of 75, I had 3, right here, right in my hands: New York, Chicago, and Philly.
Where do I want to go? Kind of.
Yeah, and my mother said, "Listen, you always wanted to work in a big media. You always wanted to be in New York City. Take this now. You don't know if it's going to be there when you're 35." So I took it at 22, and boom, that's what I did.
And then how long did it take to get, because you're going into your 14th season with the Mariners, correct?
Yeah, I'm in my 15th. Yeah, 15th year. Yeah, the old song, Long and Winding Road. I mean, I did, in a nutshell, sounds like Frank Sinatra, I've been a pauper, a piper, a pawn, and a king. I've done sports writing, sports anchoring, sports reporting, producing, talk show, play-by-play, starting with first full one was football, then baseball, then basketball, and now my 15th year with the Mariners.
And how did the show with Coach K come about?
Because of when I was covering the college basketball beat in New York, met him when he was at Army. And of course, then he goes on to fame and fortune at Duke. And this would have been 05. And my calendar during those days, football, basketball took up. So I was usually booked from September to the Final Four, let's say.
So just recent would have been just.
Yeah. But what happened was I didn't have anything really going on during the summertime. And there was a couple of summers I did baseball for ESPN, but that went away. So then my wife and I did media coaching for major colleges and pros, and we did that for a while. So I was at Duke, and Mike brought me down. He knew who I was and all that, and liked my work. And so the show was offered to him by XM. It was before the merger.
Mhm.
And we were doing our seminar. We'd go out to eat, and his right hand guy said, "Hey, could you got any restrictions that would keep you from doing a show?" Yada yada yada. And here we are. We just finished our 16th year together. So
Thanks for checking out this episode of Dingo Talk. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. For more info and to contact the show, you can find us on Twitter @DingoTalk.